Come here, Saturday Meal Vibe. I'm joined by the multi-platinum selling artist, Roger Earl, of the iconic Foghat.
Have you heard of this guy, Jimi Hendrix? And it's in all the music papers. Eric and Jimmy Page and all the top guitar players were raving about this guy who came from the States. So I said, yeah, I've heard him. He said, would you like to, try out for the drums? I said, yes, thank you. One lunchtime, it was raining, and we were all outside waiting for the club to open up. It was during the week, and I borrowed my dad's car with the drums. Jimmy came up to me and started talking to me about songs he'd written the night before. It was something else. I didn't really have a clue of what he was playing. He was just playing, But then he played a slow blues, and he played a shuffle. Then I think he might have been a Bob Dylan song. And I played for about 40 minutes.
I was going to say, did that kind of throw you? Because you've got this guy that's kind of changing the game, and you're there audition for that.
I didn't have a clue. To be honest, he was making some incredible noises, because I couldn't quite grasp it, because he wasn't playing a rhythm. He was playing, and I'm sort of trying to find somewhere. I think one of the reasons Fall for the City album was that successful, I know, because Nick Jameson was playing on it, had a huge hand in the arrangements of all the songs, especially Slow Ride, Fall for the City, everything that was on there. When Craig decided he didn't want it, or couldn't do it anymore, I should say. But Craig McGregor would, occasionally we would play with somebody like Deep Purple over here. And we only have a 45-minute or 50-minute show. And Craig would call me and said, "Oh, Rog, I think I'll come to that show out in California." The Deep Purple show? Yeah, I think I'll do that one. Me, Rod, and Dave got to shake hands and meet Willie Dixon, and he was a tall man. He was very imposing, but more importantly, as far as I was concerned, he was the father of writing blues songs that horrible little sods like us lot turned into rock and roll tunes. And he invited us over his house for dinner. We couldn't go that night because we were leaving the next morning, but about 6 months later we went back to his house on the south side, and we had dinner. We were up until about 12 o'clock in the morning, talking music. He was absolutely fantastic. Remember when Dave and I were still playing together, when Dave was still alive, we did a show in Toledo, Ohio, and Humble Pie was on the bill. Now, Stevie Marriott and Foghat were we did tons of shows with them, and Stevie was the most beautiful, crazy bastard I'd ever met. Incredible singer and guitar player.
Oh, yeah.
And we did tons of shows with him in the early 70s and throughout the 70s. And I love Stevie. I fell asleep numerous times under his coffee table. Hello, Ryan.
I am Ryan. Hello, how are you?
Nice to see you too. I made a cup of coffee. I left it out.
I'll get you the coffee. Hi, how are you? Hi, I'm Linda. I'm going to go get his coffee. Have fun.
She's the coffee girl.
Right.
I am. I'd rather be the coffee girl. Coffee girl would be a promotion. Thank you.
She works her fingers to the bone, pushing everybody's numbers on the telephone. A lot of people wouldn't get that. Yes, they would. No, it's that one, isn't it? Did you know? You've heard Slow Ride, right?
Of course.
All right. You know that there's a rotary phone written. I'm in the mood. I think Jameson did that. That's another bit of useless information for you. What are we going to talk about today?
Oh, we're going through numerous different things, but obviously we'll talk about the new album.
Good.
But we'll be covering a few things.
Okay.
If you're all good to go,
I'm good to go.
We can get into it. Cool.
I haven't had any wine yet. What's the time over there?
It's 6 o'clock here. Still kind of early, but
yes,
we could get away with it.
Lunch. I had an avocado for lunch. All right, let's get serious now. Come on, let's talk about music. Yeah. Not my culinary delights.
So I'm here, of course, with Roger Earl of Foghat. Thank you very much for joining me. Of course, you have the new album out, Sonic Mojo, which we'll absolutely be looking into. But first, I like to kind of start things off by taking a look at those early years, those humble beginnings. So what first got you into wanting to become a musician, and in particular a drummer?
Okay, you're asking me to be serious. Hold on.
A hit album, number one.
What are you kidding? Playing drums in a blues and rock and roll band? I know how fortunate I am. I was a commercial artist at the beginning. I left school when I was 15. Got a job in London as a commercial. Actually, I was a glorified tea boy and coffee boy for about the first 3 months. But I took my work seriously because, drums and cymbals are expensive back then. And when I was 16, I joined my first band, which was three guys who I went to school with. Ray Dorset, the lead singer, with Mungo Jerry was our singer and guitar player. Dave Hutchins was probably my best friend since I was 7 or 8 years old, was the bass player. Dick Howe was playing guitar. They were called the Tramps back then, and they'd been playing since they were 10. I didn't actually start taking lessons till I was like 13, so they were a bit ahead of me. But they heard something they liked. That's where it started.
I mean, I think growing up, everybody has that first band or musician that's like their musical band. Did you have an artist in particular that really kind of struck a chord with you?
Well, this band was really good because Ray Dorset and was really into blues and rock and roll, which I was. So actually, I've been pretty fortunate throughout my career. I always played with, I guess, like-minded musicians. I always played with really good players right from the very first band, and they were really good. Like I said, they started when they were 10. I joined Savoy Brown when I was 19, I think. And Kim Simmons, he's about the same age as me, might have been a year younger, but they were all really good players. So I think that helped, playing. I didn't really play with anybody who was no mediocre players. They all took their jobs seriously, except for me. I'm going to zigzag a little bit here. 2 or 3 months ago, we did a show in El Dorado, Arkansas. It's pronounced El Dorado. Well, it's all over the theater. And it was the first show that we did that we played 3 songs from our new album in, which is always kind of like a little bit scary playing new music to people. Anyway, they went down really well. And the audience were great. And then afterwards, Scott Holt and I are sitting backstage in our dressing rooms having a glass of wine. And Scott says to me, "Hey, Rog, isn't this really cool? How many jobs are there out there, like when you finish working, people stand up and clap and cheer for you?" And it kind of puts it in perspective, really. No, I love what I do. And actually, we make jokes about the fact that we get paid for traveling, sitting in planes, sitting in trains. It's like, hurry up and wait. Actually, we play for free for that extra, for that hour and a half we get. But no, I know how fortunate I am. I'm loving it.
Now, I had read that, of course, before co-founding Foghat, that you had auditioned for Jimi Hendrix. I had read this. How did that kind of happen?
See, what was the bass player's name in the Animals? What was the bass player's name in the Animals?
It escapes me as well. So
that's terrible. What happened when I was about 17 years old? Chaz Chandler, the bass player from the Animals, was putting a band together in the Twickenham, Hounslow area where I lived, and I got the job. We didn't actually play out; we just rehearsed for about a month or two. Nothing really happened. But Chaz Chandler had my phone number. I guess he remembered me. And
No.
Chaz Chandler, Linda. Anyway, Chaz called me up at work. I was working as a commercial artist at an industrial design studio, and I was in a band, and he said, "Have you heard of this guy Jimi Hendrix?" And it's in all the music papers, Eric and Jimmy Page and all the top guitar players were raving about this guy who came from the States. So I said, "Yeah, I've heard him." He said, "Would you like to, try out for the drums?" I said, "Yes, thank you." It was in a jazz club just off of Piccadilly Circus, I think. One lunchtime, it was raining, and we were all outside waiting for the club to open up. It was during the week, and I borrowed my dad's car with the drums. And back when you could park in London in the good old days. And Jimmy came up to me and started talking to me about songs he'd written the night before. And it was really cool. There was, a bunch of, I think I was about 6 or 7 in line to play drums. And it was my turn. And it was something else. I didn't really have a clue of what he was playing. He was just playing, But then he played a slow blues, and he played a shuffle. Then I think he might have been a Bob Dylan song. And I played for about 40 minutes. Obviously, I didn't get the job. Mitchell got the job, and what a great job he did. Mitch was just like absolutely fucking incredible. What a great drummer, and like played stuff that nobody else was playing like at that time in bands. But there again, Jimmy was playing stuff like nobody else as well.
I was going to say, like, did that kind of throw you? Because you've got this guy that's kind of changing the game, like and you're there like, I didn't have for that.
I didn't have a clue. I mean, to be honest, he was making some incredible noises because I couldn't quite grasp it, because he wasn't like playing a rhythm. He was like playing, and I'm sort of trying to find somewhere. But hey, that's what auditions are about. And I did get to meet him a couple of times after that briefly. I jammed with him, played a song. The first time Foghat came to the States in '69 at Steve Paul's Scene in New York, and another time out in LA at a club. Everybody was jamming. Eric Burden was singing. He was playing drums. Buddy Miles, I got up and played a song with him. Everybody was like getting up. He was something else. A person like that, a musician like that, comes along once in a lifetime, once in a millennium. He was real special. I got a chance to play with him. It was magic.
That'd be amazing. Of course, you kind of relocated over to America when you formed Foghat. Now, traditionally, you have artists that try and crack America after kind of being successful in the UK, but you guys went straight over. What do you feel it is about the band and the music that just really resonated with that American audience in particular?
Well, basically, we were playing music that was influenced by any number of forms of American music: blues, rock and roll, blues, rock and roll, R&B, bit of jazz, rock and roll, blues. I mean, that's what we were playing. I mean, I think they call it, one of the umbrellas is Americana now, but it's like, that's what I grew up listening to. And the other thing was we couldn't get arrested in England. We couldn't get any dates because our previous manager had blackballed us. And I went to see our agency, which was Chrysalis at the time, Terry Ellis and Chris Wright. And they said, we can't book you because Harry Simmons has blackballed you and said he'd take Chicken Shack and Savoy Brown away. So it was the right thing to do. America, it's the land of music for me. This is where it all comes from. Started with, the blues, jazz, bebop, rock and roll, country, gospel music, R&B. We'd be nothing without, rhythm and blues. This is the land of music. And ever since I was a kid in our house, I lived in southwest London, Hounslow, and there was always music in our house. My dad played piano. My older brother, Colin, introduced me to like the early Sun records, Jerry Lee Lewis, Johnny Cash. And, that's where it all started. I was the only kid in southwest London riding my bike to school singing Johnny Cash songs. Well, she loves you, big river, more than me. Well, I met her. Oh, stop it. I was a big Johnny Cash fan, but even though he didn't have a drummer, there was always this really cool rhythm with his guitar, and Luther Perkins on guitar, and the songs. There was always a story. Didn't always understand some of the lyrics. Today, I still don't understand them. But Johnny Cash to me was a musical giant. He was a poet. But as a kid, I heard something that had the ring of truth. And I think that's how I feel about the blues. That's why that got me. The first time I heard Muddy Waters, 1960 at the Newport Jazz Festival, that album is the most incredible live record. And that changed my life. And I got to meet Muddy Waters and hang out with him and actually play with him once. And it's really cool when you meet your heroes and they don't let you down, and it's like fun. A beautiful man, and without Willie Dixon, who wrote "I Just Want to Make Love to You," our first real hit, there would be no rock and roll. We'd all be hung out somewhere. The Rolling Stones would be out of work as well. No, they might have made it.
Of course, the album that kind of really elevated you guys to an entire new level was, of course, that platinum selling album, "Fall for the City." When you were making that record, I mean, it was obviously the fifth album at that point. When you were making that album, did you have a feeling that this would go on to be such an iconic album? It's like 5 albums deep. Many people at that point, if you look at other artists, they're kind of dropping off, whereas you guys were kind of on the rise.
I think one of the reasons that we've had such longevity, that record, was a high point. We also, it was the first time since our first record that we did with Dave Edmunds that we actually took some time off and said, we're going to spend some time. All the other albums were done like 2 weeks here, a week here, 2 weeks there, kind of bitty. But the Fall for the City album, we took 3 months off and said, we're going in the studio. Nick Jameson had just joined the band playing bass and producing the album. He's a fucking genius. and we're still really good friends. And in fact, personally speaking, if there was one person in my musical career that I've worked with that I really learned from, would be Nick Jameson, the guy who produced that and a couple of other albums with us. As a musician, as somebody you can bounce ideas off. Also somebody, even though he took it really seriously, especially his mixing and recording techniques, there was always an element of joy or fun. From time to time, there was always a moment when it would become humorous. And I mean that in the best possible way. Just the whole thing would get lightened up because Nick would or tell a funny story, or just the way he was actually playing, which is so incredible. You just sit there, and after you'd finished doing a take, we just start fucking laughing. It was so much fun to play with as a musician. And often when we would do overdub, like percussion and stuff like that, Nick and I would be in the studio doing it. He would get the sounds from whatever instruments we were playing, and then he would run in, press the button, come running down the stairs, and we'd start playing to the track. It was all, I think one of the reasons Fall for the City album was that successful, I know, because Nick Jameson was playing on it, had a huge hand in the arrangements of all the songs, especially Slow Ride, Fall for the City, everything that was on there. I think the band, as musicians and as players, we've been on the road for 5 years, basically. So everybody had their shit together. Everybody was playing, I think, at the top of their game. We were having the time of our lives. We were earning a ton of money. Actually, for the first time, had a house, and the bills were paid. And we were having too much fun. I was, anyway. Yeah, living the life. It was really, really good. It was great. Still is.
Of course, we touched on Slow Ride there. It's such a massive hit. It's the song that kind of introduced me to you guys. I mean, I heard that song through a video game. That was kind of my... everybody goes, oh, it's Guitar Hero, but it was a Grand Theft Auto game.
Right, Grand Theft Auto, right. That's right.
Because I'm a little bit older, so I was playing that when I shouldn't have been. Yeah, I can remember that song coming up, and it just really stuck out to me. Can you remember kind of when that song was being put together, kind of how that came about? I mean, it's a song that's obviously going to stick with you for your whole career.
Yeah, I vividly. Tony Stevens had left the band playing bass, got fired again. I was living up in Woodstock at the time, and Bearsville, and Nick Jameson and I were good friends because he'd already worked with us on a couple of records. And we played badminton, and we go out and jam together at the local bars and clubs up there. And I asked him if he could play bass, and he said, yeah, it's the first instrument I played. He plays everything. Don't you hate people like that? So we drove down. Rod and I shared a house out on Long Island, and we'd had the basement soundproofed. I wasn't living there at the time, but anyway, we came down, and as I said, Nick had just joined the band on bass, and Dave started playing the basic rhythm, which is sort of kind of like it's like a John Lee Hooker riff. It's played like in 4/4 as opposed to like a shuffle. And then Dave just played it on his own first, and then we started. Nick said to me, "Go bang." Pardon? There. Which 2 and 4. So, which is an interesting way to start a song. But that was Nick. The whole arrangement was done by Nick, and I guess to some degree myself. The breakdown in the middle where you got the bass and drums. There's a story to that as well. Nick Jameson was the one who pulled it all together. In fact, that day I recall us. I mean, we got the breakdown. We did this. We did. It was. It was very much a band effort. In fact, most of the songs that we wrote, Lonesome Dave was our main writer. And of course, Rob Price is a brilliant guitar player, especially his slide work. Mm-hmm. But the band always was involved in arranging and coming up with ideas and put together. But the beauty of working with Nick Jameson was that he could coalesce all those ideas and put the icing on the cake, as it were. Well, now I have to go back to the first album, Dave Edmunds. Without Dave Edmunds engineering and producing our first album, I know certainly I Just Want to Make Love to You, our first single, wouldn't have been anywhere near as successful as it was. But Dave Edmunds, an absolute genius, beautiful guy. That we were real fortunate that he decided to work with us. We asked him. I think we got down on our knees and begged, because we certainly weren't producers or engineers. Dave, please, we'll pay you. And he said, okay, then. Oh, sorry, I digress.
No. Because it's something that just comes to mind there is, of course, on that Fall for the City album, you feature on your own on the cover, the front cover. Can you remember, was that a kind of a deliberate thing there, or was it just by accident that kind of?
I was better looking than the rest of them. No, again, it's Nick Jameson's fault.
Right.
About my penchant for fishing. Because when we were up in Sharon, Vermont, when we were doing the Fall for the City album, it was in the middle of nowhere on a mountain. And, I'd get the basic tracks done. And they'd say, well, we're going to do some overdubs now. Bugger off. And so, of course, I would. And I would go fishing. Up there was, you could catch some Atlantic salmon. I caught one once up there, which is quite a feat. But salmon, trout, fishing, and I would go fishing. So Nick was well aware of my favorite pastime, other than banging stuff, and he came up with the idea for the Fall for the City album cover. That was his idea again. Mm-hmm. See, I'm talking about somebody who has his finger in every little pie, and good man. I love him like a brother.
Of course, the latest album, Sonic Mojo, is your first release in 7 years, and of course has reached the #1 on the Billboard Blues charts. Going back into the studio, was you looking to approach this album any differently this time around? Whether that be in the writing or recording process.
Well, Scott Holt had joined the band. He's been in the band 2 years now. He cut his teeth. He was the other guitar player in Buddy Guy's band for 10 years. So he's got some chops. I met Scott Holt first in 2014 because we were working on the album, our previous studio album, Under the Influence. And we were about 3 or 4 songs short of a double vinyl. And a mutual friend, a photographer, said, you should check this guy out. And I invited Scott Holt down to our studio in Florida, in DeLand, and he calls me his big brother, but or is it older brother? Yeah, old. I'm old, but we just hit it off. As humans, as musicians, our love for blues and all things musical, and we were supposed to write 3 songs. It was myself, Scott and Brian. Instead, we wrote 17. Right. Typical. So that was the start of a beautiful and long friendship. Also, an album came out of that. We put 3 songs on the Under the Influence album, and we spawned another side project called Earl and the Agitators, which is basically a Foghat record anyway. It was just, we have a mutual love and affection for like all things musical, especially American, blues, rock and roll, jazz, country. Ooh, so it was, it was like a beautiful like relationship, still is. And so this current record. Hold on.
Here we go.
But there's stories in it. So it's not like just stories about stuff. And you get the vinyl. We got it on CD as well for people like me.
Well, we're big vinyl people here. We're always in the. Oh, that's nice. Yes.
A 180 gram. Curious, and it sounds really good. I actually got a record player. We live in a really small. I have an electronic drum kit upstairs. I have practice pads everywhere and sticks everywhere. I have a drum shed out in the garden where I have my regular drum kit, but it's taken down because I'm using it in a couple of shows this month. So it's very noisy here. What were we talking about?
We were saying about the new album and kind of, did you approach this one differently? Did you kind of, when you were going in the studio?
No, it was done the same way. All the songs that we didn't write came from jamming. Myself and Scott and Brian would like just be in there, like, we were getting like sounds for the drums or sounds for the guitars or something, and we just play. I'll give you an example. Mean Woman Blues. First time I heard that was the B-side of a Jerry Lee Lewis record. And my father pointed it out to me because he brought the record in. He said, "Here, have a listen to this boy, son. He can really play the Joanna." And Dad was a piano player. So anyway, I suggested to Scott one day we do Mean Woman Blues. And he was really excited about it because when he was 15, I think, his parents took him to see Elvis Presley. And Elvis Presley did Mean Woman Blues. So we had that connection. We both wanted to do it, but we figured we can't just do it like, some of your favorite artists. You have to sort of put the hat on it, as it were. So again, we were just jamming, and Scott and I were jamming on some stuff. Brian pressed the buttons and said, there you go. And I think it was actually Brian putting his lead guitar on Mean Woman Blues that really pulled it off. I love the way Scott sings it, and it's got a real Latin feel, and I had fun like doing some percussion on it. But Brian Bassett played some brilliant guitar on it, and I think that just sort of like put the icing on it. What else should we talk about? Another song on this record?
I mean, I was just going to mention kind of my personal favorite off the album is Driving On.
Yeah, I like that.
I think it's just got that real great kind of classic rock feel. I imagine it goes down well live.
It does. In fact, that was co-written by Kim Simmons, Lee Boy Brown. Kim and I stayed friends over the years, and like I said, our previous album when we did Under the Influence, Kim got played on like 4 songs on that album, as did Scott Holt. And when we'd finished the song, we were in Nashville, a studio in Nashville with our producer, Tom Hambridge. And Kim and I were just chatting, and Kim said, I'd really like to write some songs for Foghat. I said, that would be great, Kim. You just have to play on it. And he laughed because he just, I love playing with Kim. He was a brilliant, brilliant blues guitarist. I think, in my humble opinion, I think he was one of the best blues guitar players that ever came out of the UK. That's another story. We all have opinions, don't we? Unfortunately, we lost Kim just over a year ago, December. But he sent me 4 songs that he had with like his guitar and the lyrics on it, just to a click track, I think, no the other instruments. Unfortunately, he couldn't play on them, but we recorded 3 of them on this album. So, yeah, and Driving On was one of them. I agree with you. It's a classic sort of rock and roll, boogie, Foghat genre.
Yeah, it's just, with that slide, it feels kind of that classic Foghat feel. I mean, when you guys were making this album, did you imagine that it was going to be a number one album? It's like you released it and it bang straight up there. I mean, apparently it's the only Billboard number one for you guys.
Number one of anything. Yeah, it did surprise the hell out of me, but it's really cool, for so late in our career, and also, Scott's been with us 2 years now. It's the first real Foghat record, other than the Agitators and him jamming on a few other albums we had with us. But it was it's incredible, and fortunately, it's getting making some noise over in the UK, where we need to come and play. We haven't played there since 1973. We did a couple of shows. Yeah, right. We were booked to come on to play in a show during the COVID nightmare somewhere down in the Ramblin' Man Festival. Yes. Then it got cancelled for the next year. Then when COVID eventually went away for a day, they couldn't put the show. They cancelled the festival, which is a bit sad. We did a couple of shows in Europe, one in Germany, in Belgium, and we played in Sweden Rock 2 or 3 times. But we need to come to the UK and Europe. So can you do something about that? I mean, just tell people that we can play, and we kind of know what we're doing.
I mean, we can put the word out in here now. We can do an open call for this.
The thing is, we play for free, but we're going to charge you a lot of money to get on planes and cars and trains and supply our back line.
Of course, you guys have, you in particular have been around, as Foghat for kind of over 50 years now. Which I'm sure, you'll have gained much experience during your time. Would you have any kind of, for young musicians out there, any kind of advice maybe, or maybe something that you've been told over the years that stuck with you, or maybe something that you wish you were told?
This sounds like a serious question.
It could be a serious question.
Have a day job. Play your instruments. Have a really rich girlfriend.
Yeah.
And only do good drugs. Don't do nasty drugs. Only do good drugs, don't do bad drugs. And be careful. And anytime you're actually playing and recording, get serious about it and leave the drugs alone. They're just for to have fun afterwards. I don't drink as much as I ought to. Excuse me. I'm not the singer. It's okay. Is that advice?
Do you kind of maybe musically? I mean, a lot of people go, how do you make a hit? I mean, Slow Ride is such a huge thing, and I think now it's kind of I hear a lot of young musicians that are they're kind of searching for that hit song.
I don't think we ever searched for it. It was never let's have a hit. It was other than that particular song. The other, we had a couple other hit singles. I Just Want to Make Love To You was a hit over here. Obviously, Fall for the City, Stone Blue, One, Slow Rocker, Third Time Lucky, Driving Wheel. But I think be true to yourself, or try to be as honest as you can about what you're doing. Foghat only did songs Foghat wanted to do. Fortunately, we had a great writer in Lonesome Dave, and he had a real feel for music. He was great to work with on stage, especially. He always gave it 110%, even when he was ill. But do something you enjoy. Like when I first started playing drums, there was certain music that I wanted to play, as opposed to, it's fine sitting around making noise, But playing in a band is what I wanted to do. It's the only thing I wanted to do. I did my practicing, but the real way to learn is to be in a band and play with the best people you can. And to be honest with yourself, play stuff you like. And especially when you're learning to play an instrument, I mean, hopefully, I imagine you play songs or play music that you enjoy. I mean, that's the real joy of making music and playing something that you enjoy. So, be true to yourself as much as you can when it comes to like your tasty music, which I suppose can get a bit, put your blinders on. But I remember when I was a kid, I was 15, I was living in London with my cousin, and we were listening to some Big Bill Broonzy and some other sort of. He was really into like modern jazz, and I was listening to that as well. I was still learning to play, and I said something about pure blues, and he said, "There's no such thing as pure blues," which of course there isn't, because it's a wonderful form of music. There's no pure this or pure that. I mean, music is one of those things that sort of comes from in here, up here. It's drums, it's heads, hands, and feet. It's something you create. There's nothing pure about it, actually, at all. So I learned from that one, and at the time, I remember listening to Miles Davis's Sketches of Spain, and I really remember this because I'm listening to it, and now I'm like, a three chord sort of wonder, as it were, and I'm really into like Muddy Waters live at Newport, and I'm listening to Sketches of Spain, and I didn't get it at first, but I subsequently listened to it at other times in my life and go, wow, Miles Davis was just like this incredible musician and human being in the way he played. I've watched a couple of, or a really interesting, I guess not a biopsy, but something like that. I think it was on YouTube about Miles Davis, and man had a hard life. But there again, a number of people did if they were black and a musician. Growing up in the 50s, or earning a living in the 50s and 60s wasn't easy, certainly over here. But I've spread my audible wings. I can now listen to Miles Davis and go in wonder, and wonder at what the magic that he's playing. It's so yeah. I've grown in that ways, but I still prefer to play. There's nothing like playing a Chuck Berry song. It's like I enjoy it. It's fun, and it's also fun like to work on new material and come up with ideas. Making music is like just the best.
I think that's one of the great things. Like you guys, you've always had kind of a like I can put on a track and I know it's Foghat. Like you have a real clear identity. Like there's just from the get-go, there's just, the guitar comes in, the drums comes in, I know who's playing, I feel that kind of a big thing is, as you said, like finding who you are, like do something you enjoy.
Yeah. And I have been fortunate throughout my life. I've played with really great players right from the very beginning. Like the current band, I mean, Brian Bassett, our lead and slide guitar player and producer and chief engineer, has been with us, 27 years now. I have to thank Dave for that. He met Brian. Dave moved back to the UK for about 5 years, from 84 to 89, something like that. And when he came back, he met Brian down in Florida, and that's how I met Brian Bassett. Rodney O'Quinn's been with us after Craig McGregor passed. We stole him from the Pat Travers band. I called up Pat and said, "Yeah, Pat, is it all right if I steal your bass player?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Thanks, Pat." Actually, it was because our longtime bass player, Craig McGregor, had lung cancer. And until Craig said to me that he can't play in the band anymore, we had 3 or 4 bass players standing in for him. And Rodney stood in for him, and Craig said, he's the one you want. When Craig decided he didn't want it, or couldn't do it anymore, I should say. But Craig McGregor would, occasionally we would play with somebody like Deep Purple over here. And we only have like a 45-minute or 50-minute show. And Craig would call me and said, "Oh, Rog, I think I'll come to that show out in California." "Oh, the Deep Purple show?" Yeah, I think I'll do that one." He didn't want to go to all those other places where we have 300-mile drives and turn up, and we have fun anyway. But he was. I love Craig McGregor. He was my brother by a different mother, and like real brothers. We didn't always see eye to eye. Certainly, like with some of the bands that we really liked. But there again, other times. I remember back in the 70s, we would always go and hang out together before we'd leave to go to the show, and. We'd listen to like Little Feat. Brothers Johnson was one of Craig's favorites because we had this great bass player. And then when it was time to go, we'd be ready to sort of go to the gig, get in the limo and be ready. And I miss him for that, because that was a really great time to sort of be making music. But like I said, we were brothers. And other times he'd listen to, I'd be playing something for him and he'd go, another example. Perfect example of myself and Craig McGregor, brothers by different mothers, was I said, "Yeah, all my brothers, great blues band." "They're not a blues band." "I'm afraid they are." "No, they're not." But of course, they weren't just a blues band. Of course not. They probably had every tiny corner of American music, including the band. It was like they had the whole spectrum of America in their music. And in fact, when we were getting Foghat together in just outside of Wallingford in Oxfordshire, we had a house there called Aces High. That was it. It was out on the hill somewhere in the middle of nowhere. It could make as much noise as you wanted. And every morning we'd put on the Allman Brothers and the Beatles. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so that was our inspiration back then. But the Allman Brothers, I think, I don't want to digress here, but I think they were probably one of the greatest bands that ever came down the pipe. Mm. I mean, their music, no other band prior to them played like that and absorbed so much music and put it all in like that band. They were incredible. I got to see them a number of times too. So I was fortunate with that. Yeah, the Allman Brothers. I'm an Allman Brothers fan, as he was. Mm. They're not a band. Well, I'm afraid they are. No, they're not.
Did you, I mean, we kind of touched on it there. Did you kind of find it difficult kind of reinventing Foghat? You know, there's obviously the different members over the years, of course, you know, this current iteration that you have now. Yeah. Was that kind of a difficult thing for you? Did you have that kind of discussion of like, you know, should we carry on? Should we?
The biggest thing, of course, was when Rob Price left the band in 1981, who was the original star guitar player. Tony Stevens left the band in 74. Lonesome Dave passed. What was it?
2000.
2000, right. That was the biggest thing. Other times when Dave left, I carried on playing. Dave left to move back to England for a while, for 5 years. But when we lost Lonesome Dave, that was tough, because he really was pretty much the heart and soul of this band right from the beginning. And despite the fact that he left a few times, and we always didn't see eye to eye about playing or wanting to play, which I always did. When he passed, we got the original band back together, and it worked really well. We did a Return of the Boogeymen, a really terrific album. I was really pleased with that. We're going to re-release that on Foghat Records, actually, at some time in the future. Probably put it out as vinyl as well. But there that was the toughest one when Dave passed. It was. I remember I got my road manager and a few other people gave us a whole bunch of like tapes, cassettes of different singing stuff that were interested. None of them really impressed me. But I remembered when Dave and I were still playing together, when Dave was still alive, we did a show in Toledo, Ohio. And Humble Pie was on the bill. Now, Stevie Marriott and Foghat were like, we did tons of shows with them. And Stevie was the most beautiful, crazy bastard I'd ever met. Incredible singer and guitar player.
Oh, yeah.
And we did tons of shows with him in the early 70s and throughout the 70s. And I love Stevie. I fell asleep numerous times under his coffee table. He was something else. And Dave would come and hang out with us as well. He didn't partake like the rest of us, but hanging out with Stevie, he would always have the biggest boom box. And he would pull the drawers out of his hotel room and put the boom box in there, because then it would be louder. You could hear all the bass. There was always like somebody going, "Stop that noise! Can you stop that noise?" It's not noise, it's music. Can you stop that noise? Excuse me. When Dave passed, that was the longest anyway. Humble Pie were playing, and obviously Stevie had passed by this time. Their drummer was still in the band, not playing as well as he used to. He was an incredible drummer. And they had a new singer. And Dave and I standing by the side of the stage, and we figured, well, we'll have a listen to this guy singing our mate Stevie's tunes, because he had to have a decent set of pipes to do that, because Stevie Marriott had a great set of pipes. And he started singing, and it was like, me and Dave looked at each other and went, whoa. Didn't think the band sounded all that good, but the singer was really, really good. And it was about 4 months after David passed. And I said to our road manager, "Hey, Mike, could you find out who that singer was with Humble Pie?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." Day or so later, he came back with the name of Charlie Hune. I said, "Thanks, Mike." He said, "Yeah." And I called Charlie Hune up and introduced myself, and he was a big Foghat fan. And I said, "Are you interested in singing with Foghat?" And he said, "Yes." So I sent him about 30 Foghat songs. I remember at the time, my wife said, "Isn't that a lot of songs?" And I said, "If he wants to join the band, he'll learn them." And he called me up about 2 or 3 months later and said, "I got it." And I invited him. He was living in Detroit, and I'm in Long Island. I invited him to the house, and we sat down and went over some stuff, and sounded like, Foghat had been joined by Humble Pie. At the time, I thought it was a pretty good idea. Yeah, Charlie Hume's a really, really good musician, and he played with us for over 20 years. He retired 2 years ago. That must have been a bit tough. I think it was difficult for him to sing 2 or 3 days in a row. The traveling was getting him down. I think he had some issues like with his hips or something. He was an avid skier. But he did a really good job with the band. He was a great singer, great guitar player. But in fact, when he left, I was down at our studio down in DeLand, Florida, and myself and Brian and Scott Holt were writing some music, and he sent an email to our manager and said that he won't be turning up for rehearsals, which was about 3 or 4 days from there. He's retiring, which was kind of weird. He didn't call me, he didn't call Brian or anybody. But I also, since then, it's been over 2 years. I don't think it's easy any time when you turn around and say, "I'm not doing this anymore." I can't envisage a time when I don't want to do this. I mean, there might come a time when I can't do it anymore. Playing drums in a rock and roll band, but yeah, I've got band-aids all over me. My hands have been some fantastic surgeons out there, and stuff you can do to keep everything functioning. I've torn both shoulders, wow. Right knee, toes, had work done on them. The bionic bloke. But and I've learned, to adjust certain things. I don't have cymbals up in the air anymore. I stretch, I exercise, I use like weights and stuff like that. Because playing drums, you have to be physically okay to play in this band anyway. And I try and stay on top of it. I keep my hands and feet busy. I practice most days for an hour or so just to keep my hand in. I listen to our songs and recordings, when we're playing somewhere, just to make sure everything's sort of in order. And truth is, Ryan, I play in a great band. Mm-hmm. These guys, every one of them, they're the great players. We have an absolute blast making music and having fun. And the same thing on the road. Another example I'll give you, from time to most of our dates we fly in with commercial aircraft. But occasionally we'll have like 2 or 3 day run, and we'll drive a Sprinter, or we'll have 3 station wagons or minivans. And sometimes you've got to drive, 3 or 4 or 500 miles overnight. It's a big country, America. And one of the beauties with this band, nobody moans. Everybody's like having a good time. It's like, who wants to drive? I do. Everybody puts their hands up, and it's like they argue about who's driving overnight. It's like, I'm having the time of my life. I am the elder statesman in the band, but Scott Holt accused me of being his big brother one time, which I take as about the best compliment you can get. We get on great. We love playing music. We're pretty much a very self-contained unit. We have a great road crew, and sometimes a couple of them can't make it because of various other commitments. We have 3 or 4 sound engineers that we love working with. We have our favorites, of course, but we only play usually don't play more than 2 or 3 times a week. We do around 60 to 75 odd shows a year. But we have a great crew. We have a great, what would I call them? Family. The band is only run by women. Our manager, assistant Rose. There's, we keep the testosterone best for the band, but it's very efficient. I have a ball. I have a blast.
It seems like you guys are just enjoying the moment. You obviously you got the new album out, and having watched a couple of interviews that you've done, you guys feel like you're in a good place, like creating music that you enjoy, playing gigs that you love doing. I mean, what more could you want, isn't it?
Well, right. We have fun. We have fun doing it. And to quote Arthur, isn't fun the best thing to have? I love Dudley Moore. He could play the piano too. It is, and the other thing is, I'm at a point in my career where I'm really grateful that I'm still able to play to the standard that I want and be able to do it. And I know how fortunate I am. I said it before, but I'll say it again. I play in a great band. These guys are just the best. I consider them friends. We hang out together. And when they do get drunk, which is always after a show, not always, but after shows, they're fun. They're funny drunks. Nobody's a miserable bastard. Everybody takes their craft, for want for a better word, and playing live with this band. Seriously, everybody's like, we enjoy it, but it's like, you know, the hour and a half means something. The whole day is about playing. The rest of the time, it's hurry up and wait, planes and trains and automobiles. It's like, and then when you get to do the hour and a half or hour and 45 or 45 minutes, it's like, that's what we do it for. It's really cool.
A question that I always like to finish on, I ask every guest that comes on. It's a bit of a hypothetical one. If you could tour... if you could tour or play with one musician from the past and one from the present, who would they be? I mean, obviously you've performed with some very amazing people over the years, but is there, you know, somebody that you could kind of jump back in time and perform with, if you could?
There was a dream I had, because one of my first inspirations was Jerry Lee Lewis. The first band, my dad took me to see him. And I've seen him a number of times. When I was growing up in London, I would always go and see him, West End bars, the Boat Club in Richmond, or wherever he was playing, or around London. I would always be there, as would my older brother. The interesting thing about that is Lonesome Dave would also, I didn't know him then, of course, but he was at all the same shows as I was.
Right.
Where was it? Mitcham Majestic. I think that was the first time I saw him. And Dave was like a year and a half older than me. So I was 12 when I went there. Dave would have been 13 or 14. But we went to the same shows. And we didn't discuss this, oddly enough, until I knew he was a big fan of Jerry Lee Lewis and Little Richard. And that's how we grew up on. But it wasn't until our last bus tour where we would, it's like a couple of old people, we would sit down with a glass of wine and on the bus after the show and like, talk about what we did when we were kids. And it was like, oh, you were there? You were at Richard? Yeah. What about West Ham Bars? Yeah, I was there. Where were you? It was like, Jerry Lee Lewis, I would have loved to have played with him. But having said that, I did get to play with a number of my heroes. Muddy Waters, 1977, Foghat did a tribute to the blues in the Palladium in Manhattan. We were the house band. Muddy Waters, John Lee Hooker, Paul Butterfield, Johnny Winter, all these people are on those shows. Eddie Bluesman Kirkland, Willie Big Eye Smith playing drums with Muddy's band. That was a highlight of my life. And then the encore for the whole, we were playing for like 4 hours. Recorded and filmed, by the way, and Warner Brothers have all that locked in their basement somewhere. They won't let me see it. There was a bootleg put out from in the Netherlands. They got it off of a 45-minute TV show we did with it, but that's another story. I got to playing with Muddy. I got to meet so many of my musical heroes, and I played with Willie Dixon. I got to meet in Chicago, 1977. Without Willie Dixon, there would be no rock and roll. Quick, can I tell the story?
Go
quick
for
story.
It.
Yeah. We had 3 nights at the amphitheater in Chicago, 1977. I Just Want to Make Love to You had been released off the live album as a single, and of course it was a hit off of our first album back in 1972. And the first night we played there, Willie Dixon's young daughter came down to see us, treated her like the princess that she was, of course, because Willie Dixon's daughter. Second night, she brought her brother down, Butch, and we treated him like the prince he was, and it was really cool. Everybody was excited in the band about meeting Willie Dixon's kids. Third night, they brought their dad down, and I got to, me, Rod, and Dave got to shake hands and meet Willie Dixon, and he was a tall man. He was very imposing, but more importantly, as far as I was concerned, he was the father of, writing blues songs that horrible little sods like us lot turned into rock and roll tunes. But and he invited us over his house for dinner. We couldn't go that night because we were leaving the next morning. But about 6 months later, we went back to his house on the south side and we had dinner. We were up until about 12 o'clock in the morning, talking music. He was absolutely fantastic. To talk to. He's probably written and published about 300 odd songs or more. And recently we played just outside Chicago and we went to Chess Records, which is the Blues Heaven Foundation. And there's the old Chess Records building. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's like holy ground. And it's really cool. They have all the story of the studio. Willie Dixon was the in-house producer and main songwriter there, and we're doing the tour. It was just the band. They opened it up for us, and everybody, whoever gets to Chicago, should go there. It's really something. And there was one point where Janine, I think her name was, who was in charge of it. And we're talking. All of a sudden, this lovely young woman comes in there and is looking at me like she knows me. And I'm going, it's far too young for me. And by the way, I mean, it's like, I don't know. And then, and she's smiling at me like she knows me. And I don't know her. And it's Willie Dixon's youngest daughter. She was 7 years old when myself, Dave, and Rob Price were at Willie's house having dinner, and she served us dinner.
Wow!
It was beautiful. And she's now what, I don't know, 20 something, 30, I don't know. But it was so cool, like, to reconnect. And she was telling her story. She said, before we went over there, that her mum said to her, she said, "Well, what do white people eat?" We had it was a great evening, and throughout the whole evening, after we'd eaten, had dinner, Willie, because Rod, especially Dave, like, knew a great deal more about Willie's career and all the records that he'd produced, and he would send his kids up into the upstairs loft and bring down these 78s, and like we'd all sort of look at them and go, wow, like it was black gold. That was a highlight of my life. Now, again, I got to meet another hero. So I guess that really doesn't answer your question, other than Jerry Lewis. Yeah, I would like to have played with Jerry Lee. But the real joy that I've had in life is that I've got to meet a number of my heroes. Chuck Berry I never played with. I did see him one time, though. I saw him a bunch of times, but I never got to play with Chuck. Dave and I would have loved that. But actually, I really enjoyed Keith Richards' How I How Rock and Roll. I think it was Chuck Berry's 60th birthday. They made a film of it, and it was fantastic, and Keith put this great band together for Chuck for his 60th birthday. I thought that was just a real cool thing to do. But I never played with Chuck. That would have been fun. But no.
Is there one from kind of today that somebody's still here that you think you'd like to play with? Yeah.
Actually, there's a whole bunch of people I'd like to play with. Actually, I've done a number of sessions over the years, but the reason I've done that is because I think people have listened to the record and say things like, Roger could play drums on that because of the way I play. But playing with somebody, I don't know.
Would you be tempted by?
Yeah, hold on. I've got one who's still here. Buddy Guy.
Buddy Guy.
I've met Buddy Guy a number of times. I presented to him at the Memphis Blues Awards one time. He won that particular time. He won Best Blues Artist, Best guitar player, best new record, best new something else. And my co-presenter at the time said, "Does Buddy Guy play piano?" And I said, "He'd probably win that too if he did." Hold on a second. Can you see that?
Yes.
Let me give him Buddy Guy his award. And I met him a number of times because Scott Holt was in his band for 10 years. I haven't played with Buddy, but that would be another highlight. I would love to do that one day. Quick story.
Go for it.
I'm in Long Island where I live, and Scott's staying with us for a couple of days, and Buddy's playing just down the road at a theatre. And so we're going to go there, and we're lining up outside Buddy's dressing room. Everybody's sort of, lining up to sort of pay homage to this fantastic blues man. Then it's our turn to go in there. We go in, and Buddy's guy's just beautiful. I've met him a number of times on some cruises and some gigs that we've done, but I would love to play with him. Anyway, we're sitting there. On the table, he has this bottle of, I think it's 100-year-old Hennessy cognac. Well, he sees me eyeing it, and he says, and he looks at me and he goes, you want some? I go, thank you. He said, help yourself. So I, pour myself. I'm not driving. Scott's driving. So I pour myself a decent cognac. He probably figured that, being English, I would appreciate a decent cognac. And anyway, it's time to go because the Buddy's going to go on stage. And actually, Scott got up and played with him that night. But as we're walking back downstairs into the theatre, and Scott says, Buddy never offers that to anybody. I said, huh. Mm-hmm. He figured an Englishman would appreciate a fine cognac. But yeah, I would love to play with Buddy. He's still with us and still playing, so that would cover that one. A great band too.
Well, thank you very much for joining me. Of course, for those that want to grab the brand new album, Sonic Mojo, you can now via the link in the description below. Of course, also available on vinyl, as we can see. And we'll see if we can get it back up to number one. I believe it has slightly gone down a little bit, but we can. Yeah, only just.
This time in our careers, any kind of success is appreciated and probably deserved. But I'm one of those fortunate few, as I've said before. I get to earn a living doing something I love doing. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Ryan. I've enjoyed this.
No, it's been cool. I appreciate your time.
Maybe if we come to England, maybe we'll meet. Maybe you can come and see us.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm hoping for the gig that will happen eventually. Hopefully nothing will get in the way this time.
Our manager is working feverishly with it. Our agency is talking to people in Europe. So maybe it'll happen this summer. That's something I'm looking forward to.
Hopefully so. Yeah, we can catch up then if it all happens. And thank you very much for your time. I know you're a busy person.
Not really. I've got a day out.